Hello, hi, welcome to another episode of the Tetracast. It is episode 307, and we are recording on July 15th, 2023. I am your host, Josh Torres. As you can tell, Brian, the usual host, is not here. He had some other obligations to attend to, so I'll be manning the ship for this episode. Joining me, it's the familiar faces you know and love. We have Adam Vitali.
Hello, and Brian is at a Renaissance fair.
Oh, that's awesome. I hope he
That's
talk-
that's sick.
yeah, I hope he talks about it next week. We have, as you heard, James Galizio,
Hey, folks.
and we have Chow Min Woo.
So much excitement.
I'm always excited when you're here, Chow. Okay, just like all of you, I'm always excited to talk to you guys.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
so we have, a decent amount on our docket here. We had one significant RPG release this week, if you can, I guess you can kind of count it. We do have one forbidden game, according to Steam, that we're gonna talk about here, and Capcom's newest release, which is not an RPG, but it looks like a cool, fun time that I played some of the open beta on. So I'll talk to James about that in a good bit. So first up, it's a game you've been playing for quite a bit, Adam. It is Jagged Alliance 3, and this is the first new mainline Jagged Alliance game in 10 million years.
Seems
Tell us
like
about
it.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, if you're not familiar, Jagged Alliance. Actually, I guess let me start with this. I am probably not the best person to talk about this game or this series because I've never actually played an entry in it before. I am familiar with Jagged Alliance 2, which came out like 20 years ago. I think it was like mid 2000s, maybe like 19 years ago. And it was a PC game that kind of became popular in that realm, like PC gamers, tactical RPG, kind of a tactical, tactics game. And there's been a couple of spin-offs since then, but as I understand it, none of them were really well received. They're all, mixed at best in terms of receptions, and people who like the series were just like, well, let's just play Jagged Alliance 2. And then a couple years ago, THQ Nordic announced Jagged Alliance 3. Like they kind of literally said in their press releases, forget about all those spin-offs. This is a real follow-up. So, they were kind of aware that Jagged Alliance 2 was the one that people liked, and the other ones were the ones that people didn't like, and so they wanted this one to be
Yeah,
a proper
from my
follow-up.
memory, from my memory, I played like very way back when I played a little bit of the first Jagged Alliance and the second one. I know I was never really like super into them, but they were like kind of somewhat of a novelty at a time because they were kind of like a grounded isometric strategy game. It's sort of like it was like a point and click, sort of like you have a squad and then you kind of maneuver them around with it was primarily on PC, so it was like point and click them to like take cover against like this oncoming like enemy squad, and then order them to shoot, and then sort of like you're manipulating each of these individual troops to sort of formulate a strategy to overcome like basic objectives.
Yeah, and I let me correct myself. It looks like Jagged Alliance 2 actually originally released in 1999, and it had a few like expansions up to the mid 2000s. So a little bit older than I thought even. So yeah, this is the first numbered Jagged Alliance game in 24 years, I guess.
I think in a way, like I think your perspective on it is valuable too, because I'm sure a lot of people going to this are like never have played a previous Jagged Alliance game. They might be looking going to like, hey, this looks cool. They don't really make these kinds of games like anymore. I think in a way, I think a newcomer's perspective is probably pretty valuable here. And like just like from an outsider's perspective that you've never engaged with the series before, like what did you think?
Yeah, so I've played a handful of tactical RPGs with that sort of XCOM-like system. I really like Wasteland 3, which has that sort of system. I played Miasma Chronicles and reviewed it earlier this year, which has that sort of system. So I knew Jagged Alliance, at least in terms of its direct, like combat system, is similar to that. You have basically a variety of different type of weapons, guns, basically, and there's some melee stuff too, with different sorts of ranges and ammunition and effects and things like that. You have cover, line of sight, those sorts of things. Pretty typical stuff for that sort of tactical RPG. And I had enjoyed those sorts of games, so when Jagged Alliance was rolling around, Jagged Alliance 3, I wasn't originally planning on playing through it, but it actually landed at a pretty decent time, kind of in the middle of July. Things have slowed down a little bit in the genre, finally. I'm like, you know what, let me try it out. I like these sorts of games. I know this is a little different, so let me see what it's all about. So, to set the stage, this game is set in the year 2001, and it's got like a user interface that kind of match that. It's actually kind of fun, especially if you're a grognard like me with like this old, like almost like old school typeface, old school buttons.
It's kind of like a rougher UI, sort of like like by today's standards, like everything is a very clean UI, but this was like more of a rugged, jagged sort of no pun intended.
Yeah, like there's actually like literally like emulated like websites that you visit to like hire your mercenaries and things like that look like they're out of the early 2000s.
Yeah,
there's kind of a weird nostalgia there. Like I remember when websites used to look like this. So the game itself, it has the sort of tone where there is a story behind the game, but it's kind of, there's actually a disclaimer at the beginning of the game that basically says, I don't have it in front of me, but what it basically says is the original Jagged Alliance, when it came out in the 90s, was poking fun at action movies and stereotypes at the time. So this game is similar in that regard, in that the characters that you recruit and a lot of like the characters you meet and the tonality of the game is, everything is very exaggerated. It's not a super serious game. There are maybe serious moments, but it's kind of cartoony in that sense. All the different characters you can recruit are kind of stereotyped. I don't think any of it is like mean-spirited or insulting or anything like that. But like, for example, one of the characters you can recruit is a guy whose nickname is Steroid, and he is basically an Arnold Schwarzenegger wannabe.
All right.
And
does it have Sylvester Stallone?
No, as you say that, it actually does kind of remind me of like the Expendables movies. I've only seen the first one, but it's kind of like, kind of a callback to like cheesy
action superstars of old.
Like
it's kind of the retired veterans group of action heroes.
Yeah, like exaggerated characters. So like these aren't grounded, believable characters. They're all cartoons, basically. There's that character. There's my medic / sniper was a woman who basically everything she said was a sexual innuendo. There was one of the guys who's on your team is sort of like a gangster black guy, very stereotyped. And it's one of those things where I think the game is kind of self-aware enough that it's not actually, none of these stereotypes are like insulting. It's just kind of like, okay, these characters they're not meant to be believable, like grounded characters. They're all just very strange, eccentric units that you join your team. There was a woman who on my squad who believed in things like luck and curses a bunch. So would always mutter things about like lucky, things that would affect her luck, or if she missed, it was just because the fate wasn't on her side that day or whatever. I had another woman who was basically like. She was kind of like a redneck potty mouth sort of character, just kind of like swore like a sailor at everything. And then I had my last character on my squad was like a Russian bomb demolitionist, but he was also a very heavy Christian. So it was sort of amusing in that every time he like blew something up, he was just like, may the Lord save your souls, as he's like exploding everything in a very, very thick stereotyped Russian accent. So that's kind of the tone of the game. And it's very evident early on. So it's kind of fun, but you really can't take it seriously. Like I said, think like Expendables movies. There's even a disclaimer that says it's basically poking fun at those sorts of action movies of the day. So it is a tactical RPG. And I should also mention that some of these characters, I gather, are actually basically pulled from earlier games also. So some of these characters I mentioned, you might be already aware of or familiar with. I can't say if they're really any different than they were before, but I gather some of them are basically borrowed from earlier games again, and then there's new characters as well. So it is a tactical RPG, and I gather that it actually is more RPG than maybe some of the spin-offs that came out in more recent years, in that there are levels, there are perks, there are stats. Every character has, a variety of stats. There are side quests, there are numbers everywhere. So it really is an RPG in that sense, but it does also lean heavily tactical. So outside of the XCOM-ish combat, you get a world map, and the world map is basically a grid. It almost feels like something like Risk, or like a Risk board game or something, where there's different sections on the map that you can enter and basically control as under your control, and then there's all the enemy locations that you can visit under their control, and your part of the game when you're outside of combat is basically moving around this sort of world map and placing sections under your control. And when sections are under your control, you can access more quests. There are diamond mines, which when you control these areas, they give you money. And this sort of game is a sort of game when you're starting out, you have no money, you have a couple of mercs, you have no weapons, you kind of suck at everything. So you kind of have to slow go starting out. You can't take on a lot of enemies at once. You can't just go rushing in headstrong. So you kind of have to like slowly manage your resources, gain money, hire new mercs, get more weapons, get more ammo, and so there's a little bit of a learning curve and kind of a gradual acclimation to the game as you're starting out, because starting out you're not a very good mercenary unit. I should at this point basically say the overall premise of the game, it's pretty standard, but it works well enough. So you're in a hypothetical set of islands called Grand Chien, and the president of this nation has been kidnapped by basically a marauder group. And you meet the president's daughter, who basically has hired you and kind of other mercenaries to save her dad, the president, and basically put down the fires of a looming civil war in this sort of island nation. And so that's the general premise. There are actually some like twists and turns to that, so it's not as straightforward as that premise might seem in terms of allies and who's on what team and what are everyone's goals in this different chess match here.
How's that story presented? Are there like full-on cutscenes, or is it just like
No.
mostly dossiers?
Not cutscenes. It's basically like it's almost like visual novel style, only Western aesthetic, where you have character portraits and dialogue, and it actually almost looks like that Expeditions Rome game that came out last year that Ryan was pretty fond of. It's actually like photorealistic people that you meet giving the story. And so you literally will enter a section of the map, and some of them are like wasteland, wilderness, swamp type areas, and some of them are cities. And these cities will have NPCs in them. It's at that point feels like a classic CRPG where you can talk to people. They might have, quests, things like that. And sometimes you can solve them just by various dialogue options. Your different characters have different stats. Like, for example, one of my characters had a high leadership stat, and there are certain quests. Basically, it's almost like a dice roll. Like if you have a high enough leadership, you can maybe access certain dialogue options over others. I had one of my characters, the potty mouth Southern woman, had a high. One of their perks or one of their traits was that they were a psycho. So there are certain psycho dialogue options they got access to that sometimes allowed for various things. And then there's other stats like explosives and marksmanship and medical, that certain dialogue options might require certain stats like that. So it felt very much like a classic computer RPG in that sense. All those stats also have a function outside of dialogue, pretty obvious. Marksmanship is how good your aim is. Medical is how well you can heal people. Leadership is how well you can train militias, which I'll make it to in a second. And explosives is how well you can create bombs and disarm bombs, things like that. And there's actually some of the questing is actually pretty thorough and varied in terms of what they ask you to do. Sometimes you have to go to different locations to access different like dungeon type areas where there might be a certain location, like an abandoned, building that's being overrun that you need to free. There's this one whole quest line that involves this rabies outbreak, this red rabies outbreak that you need to find a cure for that I won't get into more than that. One of the most memorable quests is you're at a port city, and the port city is about to be attacked by marauders. They basically learned that these marauders are coming. And so in the port city, there's this old gang of grandmas that are called the Coffee Beans. They're a gang of grandmas.
I dig it.
They're retired, and you basically have to recruit them to defend the city.
That's awesome.
So, like, there's like 5 old ladies of various personality types and whatnot. The main one is just kind of like almost like a crotchety jerk, smoking a cigarette, just kind of like, I don't want anything to do with anything sort of thing. And you basically have to do a couple of various things to convince these grandmas, these old ladies, to basically get the band back together to defend their city. And then in that quest battle that comes up later, they will literally join your team and kind of help you out as sort of an ally force. So that was fun. Again, very over the top, very silly in a sense, but kind of cool in the actual mechanics and how it works in terms of like you don't have to recruit these people. You can probably ignore this quest entirely or do it on your own or what have you. When I actually did the quest, one of the grandmas died. I wasn't very good at defending them.
Damn.
So, but yeah, it's actually honestly my overall thoughts. It's a really solid game. It took me a while to get used to how to manage everything, because there is a lot of management in terms of, like I said before, money, weapons, ammo, and all your character stats. Probably the most difficult part of the game for someone like me who is kind of new to the sort of tactical style was when you're on the world map, there are enemy outposts where the enemy outposts every once in a while, they will send a basically squad to take over one of your outposts. So you can't just leisurely kind of roam the map and do whatever you will. You kind of have to have a little bit of urgency and smart placement and whatnot, where you have to defend your locations, the sectors that you own. And this is where it's maybe sort of like Risk. Now, you can train militias to kind of defend cities while you're away from them, because you can't be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I trained my militias very well or if I didn't do it properly, because they always seem to suck. What I ended up doing was I was just like, man, these enemy outposts are annoying as hell. I'm just going to beeline to each one and take them out, so that way they can't send anything. So it was kind of tough, because I think I was taking some of them on earlier than I should have. A lot of saving.
But you're like balancing between short term and long term. Like, do I really want to keep this?
I was basically like, if I can get over this hill of knocking out some of these outposts, then I can more leisurely explore, because these outposts are no longer sending squads at me every 5 days or whatever it was. So now that I've kind of played through the game, I've beaten it, and have like a better understanding of, oh, here's exactly how things work and maybe what you should do starting out. Probably would have an easier time going through it now. And also I kind of know which areas on the map are more hotly contested than others.
Right.
But that was probably the one thing that was probably the most frustrating, just because the game doesn't go light on you in terms of that sense. Eventually you do have, this game is pretty long. I think it took me about 40 hours.
Wow.
Halfway through the game, 20, 25 hours or so, you do eventually get to a point where you have plenty of money, almost more than you know what to do with. You've gathered a stockpile of medicine and ammo and things like that, where it's, and your characters have leveled up a bit, that taking on squads and defending bases and taking out outposts are all much more manageable than they are at the start. But overall, like I said, it's a really solid game. I am going to review it for the site. I haven't yet. I just beat it yesterday and kind of have some preliminary thoughts, but I'll write up a review and post it. I'm glad I played it. It's a very, for tactical fans, it's an interesting game. It leans a little bit more tactical than RPG, but it's got plenty of RPG elements. The review embargo has dropped, and I think the game is released as of yesterday. Yeah. And seems like the reception is pretty good. seems like it's just going on very broad general consensus. It seems like it's a worthy follow-up to 2. It seems like people are generally pretty positive on it. I'm sure there's some bugs and launch things that they're ironing out. I ran into a few like text glitches, and a couple times like I'd open a menu and it would be empty and I'd have to close and reopen it, and then it would be filled in. So, a couple of small little things. There are a couple of components of the game that I haven't looked into that might be super cool depending on how you play these games. It has full mod support. So there's probably,
okay.
I'm imagining people making their own campaigns or quest lines or characters or whatever to do that. And also there's a co-op mode. Like you can play this game in co-op. And I
that's interesting.
don't quite know how that works, but there's, obviously during the review period I couldn't do that. But there's a whole, co-op option that maybe if you have a friend who plays these sorts of games, you can play it together, and maybe it's 100% better or more fun if you do it that way.
I want to play this. This sounds really really neat. I'm glad that they it seems like they weren't kidding. They said, hey, we're really gonna commit to making it like a worthy follow-up to the mainline Jagged Alliance game, and it seems like they pretty much knocked it out of the park. Is I believe only available on PC and with no other announced.
Yeah, it's PC exclusive. I honestly couldn't imagine playing this game with like a controller. It's a mouse and keyboard game, and probably worth mentioning that this game is developed. I'm probably going to mispronounce their name. Let me get the name in front of me here. It's a Bulgarian studio, Haimimont Games. I might have mispronounced that. They're the studio behind like the Tropico series, which is, as I understand it, sort of like a nation's civilization management sort of game. So it's sort of similar. You can see where there's maybe some connective tissue between a game like that and more of a tactics game like this. And I always find that kind of interesting. Like, this is developed by a studio in Bulgaria. I don't think I've ever played a Bulgarian RPG before, and
but they're well regarded. I mean, like people really like the Tropico series, so it's glad that like their shift, like something like a way different genre, like probably not their first primary area of expertise, and they've seemed to really just done a really good job.
Yeah. Also, the music is pretty solid in this game. There's actually even a couple of. So I'm not the best person to talk about this, but the game is set in a. It's like a not African island, so on and so forth. But like when talking about the music, I was looking at the credits, and they even had some like South African musicians and singers taking part in the game and creating some of the music. There's some vocal themes that you hear in the game, so on and so forth. And then there's a Bulgarian composer, I think, that did some of the other tracks, and it's I think it's actually pretty well done.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's a really good attention to detail. It gives you like a more authentic feel to it, and like especially from like from some, if you haven't really played much of these games and like you're kind of going into it, it's like it sounds novel, it feels novel, it's something memorable.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
But yeah, if you like tactical RPGs, try it out. If you are like me and you maybe have played some but not a lot, just I guess be aware that like the first couple of hours, just there's a little bit of an acclimation period, but otherwise, yeah, I think it's a really solid game. So I'm glad I played. I'm glad I kind of decided. We basically got like the from the PR, we got like the review sort of like offer, like, hey, do you guys want to review this game? And I wasn't really planning on it, and I was just like, actually, you know what? Why not? Let me try it out, and I'm kind of glad I did. So
nice. All right, that's sweet. I do want to get around to it. That sounds like definitely up my alley, especially that it's more like an RPG slant to it. Why not? Okay. Next we have a forbidden game. According to
we might
Steam.
as well just kind of like for the preamble now.
James has been checking out the PC release of Dungeon Travelers 2, and I know on the recently Dungeon Travelers 2-2 was also recently released on PC. These titles are both available via Jorin, not Steam. And earlier this week, we did get word from the publisher Shiravune that they did submit these two titles to Steam in hopes that they could get it released on there to a wider audience, and they let everyone know via social media and through the press email, that like, yeah, the Steam Valve basically denied our request, and we won't be revisiting this again. So those Steam versions are effectively canceled.
So there's a few layers to this. First off, so obviously that piece never came out, but when Chaos Head was briefly banned on Steam, I did some research into other games were banned, and we knew basically last year that Dungeon Travelers 2 had been submitted. It had been banned because of the way that SteamDB works. The web assets for games that have been banned will get uploaded. And so we knew that that game had been submitted and banned like as far back as like last February. Not this February, but like last February or something like that. And I reached out to Xuan-Yuan at the time because we didn't know who had actually like we could guess, but we didn't know who was actually working on it. And now that it's all official, I can just say the reason they didn't say anything then is that, quite frankly, for a lot of these smaller publishers, they rely on Steam because Steam is basically the only game in town. And sure, it doesn't help that Joran is a DRM platform and has some pretty draconian DRM stuff. But the fact of the matter is that the VN like reading audience, it's not even just about that, or like even the dungeon RPG audience. Yes, there's a certain contingent of people that will buy that game regardless of what like PC platform it ends up on. But that group is so small, and if it was just that group buying that game, it would not recoup the costs. So for all of these like publishers, not just Shirobune, but like the smaller ones like Jazz USA, Manga Gamer, Seikai Project, if one of their titles gets banned on Steam, that is essentially a death knell to ensuring that they will not recoup their costs. They will lose money on that project.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
the reason why Shirobune didn't say anything until recently is because they have other projects. They recently announced White Album, and that's coming on Steam, at least for now. Like, they didn't want to rock the boat and potentially put a target on their backs for later releases. Obviously now, it seems like they have done some calculus, and they're like, no, we actually do want to make a statement on this, and they have. And so Dungeon Travelers 2 and 2-2 are both, I'll just be blunt, they're very risque dungeon RPGs. They are very fan servicey. There is definitely elements of them that I personally do not like. But, and like both of those games were console exclusives. These PC versions, which came out last month, those were not the original releases. The original releases were approved by Sony for release physically on the PlayStation Vita. And I think for Dungeon Travelers 2, it even got a PSP release.
I think back in those days, I think Sony was a lot more lenient.
Yes.
That's true. Just a side note, I do remember when the localized version of Dungeon Travelers 2 came out, Atlas had to edit 4 images for the localized version, and I remember people obviously threw a fit. But
yeah,
I think Shirobune even said the PC port is based on that version. So those 4 images are still edited, and it was still banned from Steam. So whatever they were, I don't even know what they were. But
even though this same version of the game, the same assets, everything, maybe they did an extra editing pass on the translation. They probably did. Everything, like, from the content is the same as the Vita release, which was rated by the ESRB and got a physical release in the States. I'll just be blunt, like, I don't like aspects of this game. I think it's kind of gross, even though I'm playing through it, and as a dungeon RPG, it is pretty good. What the fuck, Valve? The fact that, like, as far as I can tell, this is so arbitrary. You see shit on Steam, like, literally every day that is, like, explicitly porn, more, like, out there.
How many Steam titles have the word hentai in them, you know?
Yeah. It's like, regardless of my personal feelings on this specific game, it's like, it's obvious to say, hey, there's some weird sort of double standard going on, and there's very clearly inconsistency with how like Valve decides what can release on Steam and what can't. Like
Wow.
I'm looking at Steam right now, and there's a new release called Succubus Prison. And
Well,
I mean, yeah, wow.
I always get Sex with Hitler pop in my Steam feed. I don't know how that shit gets approved.
that's an entire series that's allowed to continue releasing on. It's just there is so much that's just like, man, it's.
I think the luck of the draw on who reviews your game. That's
I-
all
I-
it is. It's like
yeah,
whoever
when
re-
Yeah, and one thing I saw in my like Twitter replies when I like quote tweeted the Shirogune announcement, basically saying, "Hey, this is messed up." Apparently, one of the things that people have noticed now, and again, this is just a random person on Twitter, but it sounds plausible enough. I can actually believe it. They said the current meta now is to submit your game as Chinese only, so you ensure that the person that reviews it is only one like from a specific pool of reviewers. That way, when it gets approved, then you can add English later.
Yeah, it's really weird because like in some aspects, like you're like challenges are saying that like yes, it depends not only on the person that you get, but you're relying on like an independent party's like moral values almost, or like as arbitrary as that sounds, you're relying on their moral values for a pass fail, rather than relying on like a standard policy for this sort of thing to adhere to. I think that's so weird to go on how to go about like how you do these types of things.
So, anyways, I've been playing through the PC version. Shiravoon did send me a copy. I've been like, despite like again, like I said, I do have some issues with the
To be
fan service
clear,
stuff.
just in case people aren't aware, these games are available on PC through the Zhouren client.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So when he says PC version, that's what he means. It's not on Steam, but you can get them on a different client.
yeah. If you're willing to deal with the DRM stuff, and it's a good port. Like, I mean, it's a dungeon RPG. There's like, regardless of if like the options or whatnot or lack thereof, it's like it's functional. Gamepad support works perfectly fine. It's like for a lot of people that have been specifically wanting Dungeon Travelers 2 and 2-2 on PC and 2-2's case in English, it's like both of those are available.
I'm hoping they come to other platforms. Like, hopefully they explore like GOG, for example. I know they're starting to release
Or
like
Jazz or something, because I know Jazz has this storefront. It's like the main problem a lot of people are having right now is specifically well twofold. The DRM. I am led to believe that if it wasn't for the DRM in this release, it would actually run perfectly on Steam Deck. I'm led to believe. So that's like one thing where it's like, okay, if you can get it on another platform, maybe you'd be able to play it on Steam Deck, even if it's not available on Steam. You'd have to obviously set it up yourself. But it's like, it's just Jorin itself. Like, I have, like, before now, I hadn't used it. And it's like, man, I can see why people don't really like it.
Mhm.
It's just very, very like awkward to use. And it has this weird thing where it's like, okay, so you have to activate it on, you have 5 activations, and once you've used all 5 activations, unlike, for example, Denuvo, where it's like you have 5 activations within, or like the developer sets the number of activations within a 24-hour period, and then after that, you're locked out from activating it on any other platforms for 24 hours. On Jorin, you have 5 activations, period. Once you run out of activations, if you want to install it on a different PC, you need to buy it again.
Ugh.
So it's rough. It's
That's
rough.
bad.
And again, I'm not going to blame Shirobune for this, because I understand like Jorin's like a DMM Games launcher, which is their parent company from what I understand. And it's like they tried to release it on Steam, and the fact that it's not on Steam is not on them, it's on Valve.
Right.
And I'll just say it again. If you are upset with this, talk to Valve. Reach out to Valve. Like we know that they listen, or at least they listen if the uproar gets loud enough, because that's what happened with Chaos Head. And I think this is very explicitly a situation where it's justified to get angry and like make us think about it. But yeah. Anyways,
I mean, and like it's one of those things that like since there's precedent, like there's a chance that it'll work, right? Like the Chaos Heads thing is just like that's kind of what happened. It was like a 1-to-1 correlation of like because there was enough uproar about it from the public, they just did it. They just kind of let it slide and like released it. So like it worked before, might work again. You know?
Yeah. But anyways, the game itself. Adam, have you played Dungeon Travelers 2 before? I'm asking.
I play a lot of dungeon RPGs, but I will say the skeevy elements of this are just kind of a turn off for me.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah, so it's a perfectly good dungeon RPG outside of those elements. It has a lot of it's one of those dungeon RPGs where it's very equipment based. Like to be clear, you do not buy any equipment. You just find unidentified stuff in dungeons or as drops from like enemies, and then you pay a fee to identify them. And it can be just like as simple as a base level weapon or armor piece or accessory. It can maybe be one that has a plus, like be augmented. So it's like +1, +2, +3, +4, etc., etc. It could have a specific like attribute to it. For example, like there's like leather mail and then there's like damning leather mail. And what damning leather mail is it just gives you additional like water resistance and stuff like that. So a lot of the game, it's very similar to like Stranger of Sword City in that regard, where a lot of your playtime for like building your party is going to be finding these equipment drops and hoping you get what you want. Which a lot of people aren't going to be a fan of that, especially with how streamlined a lot of modern like dungeon RPGs are. Even like the more complicated ones like Labyrinth of Refrain, Labyrinth of Galeria, it's like that's less of a focus, I'd say. But I'm enjoying it so far. It's again, the port's good. Basically, it's like if you were hoping to play this on PC, it's available now. I have not started 2-2 yet. Get back to me in a few weeks. But
yeah, those are long games. I hear they're pretty beefy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
James, you've also been checking out another title this week that recently came out. It's not an RPG, but it's also something that I had a passing curiosity on when I played its open beta. It's Exoprimal from Capcom. It is that game that sort of looks like Dino Crisis, but not really.
Summoning raptors.
It is. There's Chansey the Cloud of Raptors. There's a dinosaur weather broadcast element to it. So, for my playthrough of the beta, you're basically going. It's kind of like a PvEVP where there's two teams of like live players going up against each other. It's like I think five or six players going up against each other.
5v5.
Yeah, 5v5. You have like these exosuits that have different abilities, and you have your standard roles of tank, DPS, and healing to some extent, or support in these squads of 5. And then so at the first phase when like a match starts, like it's kind of almost like a race of like who's killing dinosaurs the fastest. You're kind of going about like this, traversing this map, and you run across like, these waves of dinosaurs, these clusters, and then you like kind of beat up these dinosaurs as fast as you can. And then if like the teams are close enough and like in sort of like mission progress, there's a chance that like they'll meet each other in combat. That's what I.
They will almost always meet each other in combat.
Okay, so tell me about it.
So this is kind of a hero shooter and kind of like a Left 4 Dead type situation where it's like obviously hordes of instead of zombies, hordes of like different dinosaurs. One thing I did not expect from this going in is that there is actually a sort of RPG progression system to the exosuits. The more you use them, the more you level them up, which unlocks the ability to buy these modules, which are like stat buffs, and then you can level up the modules. So, for example, the healer that I like to use, Witch Doctor, has this like healing kind of whip thing that you can send at somebody to like heal them. You can unlock a module that will add an additional like modifier to it that anyone that you heal with it will also get like a huge buff to their like damage output for like a small period of time. So you can choose the slot that you have like up to 3 different module slots, and then you can level these up. So it's like, for example, you can make that like last longer, be more effective. For the main like kind of DPS one with the like machine gun, you can get a module that makes it so that the longer you're shooting at a target, like eventually it will buff the damage that you're putting out. So instead of, for example, let's say the base damage against a specific dinosaur, like with each shot, is 20. You can buff it up to the point where it'll be an additional 20% damage. So like if you're shooting at it after a few seconds, it'll be, instead of 20 damage per shot, it'll be like 24. And you can also get stuff like a modifier for your grenade launcher where it's like, instead of it shooting in an arc, it is like a straight line and it can go farther. You can also, there's like all sorts of little things, and there's very much, since it's very quick to switch between these exosuits in the middle of like a middle of a round, sometimes it would be like, okay, we don't really need a tank for this one because we're like trying to kill as many of these enemies as possible, and it's maybe more important that we just have the firepower to deal with it and like a healer or two. So you can just switch in the middle of combat to kind of better match up with with whatever objective you're doing for each like sub objective during like a match.
Yeah, it's like the objective like evolves over throughout the match too, because like she starts out like you killing dinosaurs, then eventually it'll start to like converge to like sometimes a payload sort of situation. I know in like the beta that I was playing, there's also like this there's like a person designated as like wielding like this sort of hammer weapon
Yes,
that like you have
yes.
to protect, and then that's gonna be worth a certain amount of points as well, and
Yeah,
so
and
forth.
then like one of the things I've noticed that a lot of people have been saying in like Steam reviews is that, oh, there's not a lot of enemy variety and there's not a lot of mode variety, and I can understand why people come across like feel that way. The problem is that because of that like RPG progression type system I was talking about, the game doesn't want to throw you at these like stronger dinos and like more demanding objectives immediately. They want to ease you in. So they want to like, they're not going to start sending you at those objectives until you've done like at least like 10 matches, because they want to make sure that you know what you're doing and that you've progressed your mains enough that you're a bit stronger than when you started. So you're prepared for those tougher dinosaurs, tougher objectives. You understand how the game is played. So you'll see some people that are saying, oh, I've played for like 3 or 4 hours. Every match was the same. And it's not that they're wrong, but like almost it's like that one meme of the guy like in the mines, and it's like you see one guy like walking away and then another guy like going right at it, and like the guy walking away is like right next to the jackpot. It's like,
Yeah, I think that, yeah, it seems like there's, I think the primary flaw of the game so far, at least with the early game that I've been seeing, is that like the on ramping to that content is maybe a little bit too slow. So people like a lot
yeah.
of people don't get to like kind of tap out because like it's kind of like almost borderline unreasonable to tell people, hey, please wait 3 to 4 hours to see the rest of the game to vary it up, right? It's like comparing it to like, imagine if Counter Strike or Valorant started off people with like these like, the teams facing off against each other, but the only things they could buy in the shop is only like maybe 5 guns, and it's only like maybe you only see 2 or 3 of their maps, and then they're gonna wait. You have to level up, your account or your character in like Counter Strike or Valorant for like 3 to 4 hours to see like the rest of the guns and the rest of the maps. That's sort of the where I draw that comparison of that. Like for me, it's like if you kind of get through it like within 30 to 45 minutes, even an hour, and then you open that up, I think that would be a much more reasonable ask than like having people kind of grind towards that and
On
sort of
the
like.
same token, I actually do agree with their choice to make it be a bit slower paced, because it is it is a bit of a complicated like gameplay loop, and it takes a while for it to really click, and it won't be for everyone. But I'll just say I'm enjoying this like a lot.
That's
And like
good.
there's
Yeah.
also like some like the way the story itself is like surprisingly interesting. Like I tweeted out something where it's like it's kind of political, like in an interesting way, because there's like this very like the basically what's the best way to sum up the story? You crash land on this fictional Pacific island called Bikatoa, and it's very clearly meant to be like again Pacific Island coded, like Hawaii, like all that sort of stuff. Where it's like this is an island with a lot of culture that was basically colonized, and the indigenous people were basically locked out, and it was used as some tech bros like project to do something that was very clearly not thought through. There were whistleblowers saying, "Hey, this is a problem. You need to pump the brakes on this," and they went forward anyways, and everyone else had to suffer for the results. And there's like the way the story is told in this game is every few matches you'll get cutscenes, but you'll also get data logs which you can read, and it's like this sort of exchange between these two characters and like dropping some lore or info about the game world. And one of the ones I found last night was just straight up talking about how there were originally when the island was basically taken over by this corporation, sold to corporate interests, there were like protests. Well, there were at first like the indigenous people tried to bargain to get their land back, and then they protested, and they just outright said, "Oh yeah, and these protests, these police forces which were recruited by these companies, used rubber bullets and water cannons, which killed several protesters, left many of them wounded, and over 100 of them were arrested." Just straight up saying, yeah, this is a thing that happened, and the characters that were reading over this just outright say, yeah, they got fucked over. This is messed up. So it's so it's interesting just seeing this stuff evolve throughout the story. And it's like, I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I don't know how many most people are gonna like it, but yeah, I'm really liking this.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Like for me, I am in a really I'm like the worst person to I'm interested in the game. I want to try it out, but there's a fatal flaw in all this. Is I would have to paying the paying for the game doesn't bother me, but I would be going on getting it on Steam, and all my other friends are playing it on Game Pass. And one of the fatal flaws that they've done at this launch is I really do not understand, and it sucks. Is
there is crossplay?
There is crossplay, but they don't support cross parties right now, meaning that I couldn't be my friends and I wouldn't be able to party up with each other because they're all on Game Pass. But since I'm on Steam, I can't even get into a party with them to go search for matches.
And I understand why you don't want to use the Microsoft Store, because there is some sore history there. So.
Yeah. I just I can't bring myself to do it again. So it's just it sucks because if I play this, of course I'm gonna play with friends. I just don't want to always play with random people. But they're all on Game Pass, and if I can't party up with them, then what's the fucking point? So it's it's if they get cross parties running ASAP, as in within the next few days, then I'll start considering it seriously again. But at this point, man, that's a really bad way to launch a game. You're gonna advertise crossplay, but you can't have people party with their friends if they're on different platforms. It's okay, then what's the fucking point? That's kind of the reason, one of the primary reasons you would want crossplay, in my mind. So that sucks. That's a really, I wish that was higher on their priority list before launch.
Yeah.
What can you do at this point?
I'm just glad that they know that this is something that people care about now, so that whenever the next Monster Hunter comes out, they'll know, hey, don't do that.
Can you imagine if they launched the next Monster Hunter without crossplay, or didn't allow you to fucking get into a party cross platform?
Yeah.
Fuck.
But anyway, and the thing that's baffling about this is that we literally just had Street Fighter 6 release, and you can just add people to custom rooms regardless of the platform. So it's
it just worked. Yep.
Well, so I guess because they have a different ecosystem, because they have CFN Capcom.
No, this is Capcom ID too.
Yeah, that's just Capcom ID too. Yeah.
Does it not work? That's so
the crossplay works. Playing against other people from other platforms works. Yeah, matchmaking. But if you want to party up with people to play together and they're on different platforms, it does not work right now. And I don't they said, I don't know. It should be. I imagine they're just they're trying to get on that ASAP. I imagine. I I haven't really kept that if they're like it's in the cards or not.
Yeah, they said they're investigating it. Like,
Oh
let's
my
see if I
God.
can find the exact tweet.
You know how this goes, Shao, and they're investigating. They're it's gonna be a while. Yeah, they also laid out like they had like a live stream for it before the game came out. They were like kind of laying out the roadmap, of, like trying to like get some confidence. Like, hey, this game will have legs. Like in like I think a season past the season 2, like later this fall, there's gonna be Street Fighter 6 collaboration. Then like
And,
early 2024, they're gonna collaborate with Monster Hunter. So that, and then they're also planning like more end game activities and like other variants to suit, so they have like a different like sort of move set or a remix to their move set or tool set. Yeah, so I genuinely want to give it a shot, but I would only want to play it with friends, and they need to, if they want to get more people on board. That kind of game sort of needs a healthy, consistent population to make it work.
Yeah, it'll be fine though because it's on Game Pass, so people like at least on that end will probably keep playing it. Also, I do gotta wonder because like we don't know the exact numbers for like Game Pass deals, but we do know that like Microsoft paid like CyberConnect 2 like several $1 million at minimum for Fuga 1 and 2 on Game Pass, because that's how we know that is profitable for CyberConnect 2 now. And I guess that's a good segue for later, but I should have saved it. This is a AAA release from a major AAA publisher that's day one on Game Pass. I would not be shocked if the money they got from Microsoft immediately made this game profitable.
Yeah, I can say that.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
Anyways, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. If you're at all interested in these types of games, and you're listening to this, give it a shot. It's genuinely great. I can't guarantee you'll like it, but it's worth trying. If you have Game Pass, download it, try it. You might be surprised.
I think I might be. I wasn't around here earlier, but can I ask one last question? Is there any Dino Crisis connection into this?
No.
Damn. We'll never get that conclusive ending.
I mean, okay, to be fair, like the story of like the first Dino Crisis is like, okay, it has a pretty neat twist to it. The Dino Crisis 2, okay, still fairly decent. 3-man, okay, the Dino Crisis 3 kind of fucking dog shit, dude. It's stupid.
It killed the series from what I heard. But I only play up to 2, and I love 2.
Okay,
2 is like
well,
the arcade.
you should go try out 3 and tell me if you want a continuation of that.
It's like, what platform is on? Free is on again?
I think it's just Xbox, the original Xbox.
Damn, who even has the original Xbox these days?
I don't know. Maybe it works on like backwards compatibility. But I don't know. The case of that was Jagged Alliance 3, Dungeon Travelers 2, and Exoprimal. Moving on, since you did mention CyberConnect 2, you did get up some interviews, James, and then we'll just hop to it. Like, you got to interview CyberConnect 2. What do you ask them?
It was kind of like almost like a follow-up interview to the one I did with them in 2019. Basically just talked about how, hey, so how has like self-publishing been going? How's basically?
Yeah, the last time we saw them like for an interview, it was like before they really like went on their like independent publishing journey with like the first Fuga, basically, because like up until that point they were very reliant on like the Naruto Ninja Storm series. They were still developing that Demon Slayer fighting game that under Sega, and yeah, and also they had Dragon Ball games as well. So yeah, but how has like this independent publisher like journey been going for them now that we're a good chunk of years into it?
They were very candid about how they were maybe a little underprepared for certain aspects of it, like having to deal with marketing, regional pricing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So very not something that we needed to hear from them. Something that's very easy to observe, but
yeah, I mean,
interesting to hear them admit it. Like
it's a gigantic thing that they did. It's like not only just like going in fully independent publishing and taking over all those marketing rights and regional price and having to consider regional pricing, but also they kind of went whole hog on like just releasing their like first title under it into like basically all platforms,
Yeah.
and having to do that is going to be a tricky task, especially when you're kind of doing it. You have to put up like so much money to like even just like start testing for that and prototyping it on like those platforms and
Well,
making sure they run well.
well, for that they actually did say that was like probably the easiest aspect of it
Oh,
because
is
they're
it?
already
Okay.
because they're already a multi-platform developer, so they already
Okay.
had that framework in place for all that
Nice.
testing on their end.
Okay.
But the publishing duties and all of that entail, they just outright said, yeah, we have a newfound appreciation for our publishers now, which is funny to hear them say.
Yeah.
But yeah, talked about just one interesting thing from the interview, which let's just put it this way: like Fuga 1 had a secret movie that kind of teased like Fuga 2, and Fuga 2 has a secret movie that kind of teases a Fuga 3. From specifically my interview and like talking with them, it sounds like they are not actually sure if they're going to be making a Fuga 3 yet. Which is interesting because the director of the first two games, which has left CyberConnect 2 now, did say, "Oh, Fuga's going to be a trilogy." It does make me wonder, and like they stress very hard. Oh, we have to consider the market. We have to consider the market. And it's like, to me, that says one thing: if they don't get a Game Pass deal for Fuga 3, or if they don't get like a guarantee from Microsoft that they would be able to get like Game Pass money for it, it's just not going to happen. At least at this stage.
Yeah, that sucks. But that's kind of like in a like I in my mind, I thought that like development for the third one already started, and like I thought like the director left, but like there's some sort of protege to carry on that development and see it through. But to hear that like proper development hasn't really started yet, it's like, that's a really weird timeline of events, right? Where the director, the ex-director now says, "Hey, it's going to be a trilogy," and they're really excited for the trilogy, and now they're just like, "Yeah, we don't know if we're going to do it." It's like that's I wonder what the circumstances were on like the director leaving in the first place. Kind of leads into I have questions on.
It definitely gives you the impression that maybe it wasn't a fully like happy departure, which
Yeah,
who
it
knows?
happens. Yeah, life
Yeah,
goes on.
yeah. Though from the interview, they did actually say is that you remember how Fuga was originally announced as part of the trilogy of Vengeance, and that there was two other games, Cecile and Tokyo Ogre Gate. Yeah, Tokyo Ogre Gate.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those games are back in active development, and they said that we will have more to share soon. So maybe
Okay.
TGS. It makes sense to me that maybe they're thinking, okay, they might return to Fuga in the future, but it definitely sounds like they want to get those other two games that they had briefly like done development on. It's like, okay,
I think that's the right call. I think they should give they should really try to, because like it gets harder and harder to like market a new Fuga, right? Because like
yeah, because it's like
as a new
nobody's
sequel
gonna
comes
play.
out,
Like, who
Mhm.
played Fuga 2 that didn't play Fuga 1 first? Like, and now
Right?
it was less of an issue for that one since both of them are on Game Pass. But for Fuga 3, they were probably rightfully thinking that if that doesn't get on Game Pass, what is the sales potential for that game? Especially if the way that secret movie in Fuga 2, like, it makes it seem like any Fuga 3 would have to inherently be a bigger project,
Right.
like an enhanced scope. So it's like,
And they need to start thinking about like, hey, well, like, what if like if we're potentially missing like another market here that like who weren't really into Fuga and they want something like a new experience, and we gotta really go for that market again, because like like obviously there's gonna be inevitably some people who weren't on board with Fuga, and they want to like but they're still waiting for the next thing CyberConnect 2 comes out. They want something totally brand new that'll like cater maybe more to them. So
yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. I know last time, I don't know if it was like a Famitsu interview. There was some other interview where they said they started. Last time you heard about the other trilogy of Vengeance titles, I think one of them they started like uh, uh, prototyping that on like on a console. Like they finally got it up and running on a console build of that game. So that was like several months ago now. So we'll see if they have anything to show. Maybe at TGS, like you said, because that would be the next opportune time to show this to a wide set of eyes. So I'm looking forward to seeing what like CyberConnect 2 does. That's they're pretty creative and left to their own devices. They've shown. You did another interview, and it was title that we discussed with our guest George Yang a few months back, and you've been playing
A
through
few
it
weeks
too.
back.
Or yeah, weeks back. What is time? You did an interview about Master Detective Archives Rain Code, and you had you guys spoke with Kazutaka Kodaka and the Spike Chunsoft localization team on
Yep.
this project.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting interview, and actually, one of the questions I asked and the answer I received caused a little bit of a not a stir, but a discussion on this market focused forum that kind of spun off of Reset Era install base, because like I asked about what it was like to develop a game for like the Switch, like exclusively, and Kodaka just outright said, "Oh yeah, like developing for the Switch is difficult," and I think most developers would agree with me on that. And then like people were like, "What?" So definitely interesting parts of that interview. Also, I am kind of surprised that Spike Chunsoft was okay with me publishing the fact that one of their folks from their localization side said that they had to crunch to get the simultaneous localization out on time.
Oh well, I'm glad that I mean, to provide context, this is one of those interviews because sometimes interviews we're able to publish freely, but there are some interviews that you do at cons that are like that, like it's kind of mandatory that the publishers
You send it over to them for
review.
them to okay it, and they okayed it. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. So
But
those kinds of interview arrangements are always kind of weird and dicey, but I'm glad they were able to like report on that and they allowed it. So yeah, I mean that sucks that crunch had to happen, but it becomes unfortunately more and more normalized in this industry.
I guess awareness is the first step to potential change. So
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, I mean they're taking steps there, slowly but surely. You had a union from Sega, officially come together and like get approved and everything. So slowly but surely, like more and more parts of the industry are getting unionized, and rightly so. Making sure the workers get properly compensated and treated fairly for the work that they put in to game development, which is once again, this is not a new thing, but game development is a fucking nightmare process, no matter what. So up and down the ladder.
I mean, everywhere is having a strike right now. I mean, there's the entertainment with the writer's strike.
Writer strikes, SAG-AFTRA, and the Starbucks union. So, and
Have
rightly
you
so. Rightly so.
have
Rightly
you
so.
heard what they were gonna do? It's pretty fucked up. They're trying to like starve the people going in strike so that they would run out of money and cave in.
It's disgusting, honestly.
It's like, oh god.
So best of luck. Solidarity to all the workers trying to fight for their rights for fair compensation. Keep on fighting the good fight. You're in the right here. Other articles that were recently published on our lovely site. Paige got to review Atelier Marie remake of The Alchemist of Salberg. This is the remake of the first Atelier game. She seemed to like it. She published her review, and it's a quaint little game. It does definitely have, from what I can glean for the review, like it does reintroduce back some of those more like time-based mechanics that like the Atelier series was heavily known for when it first started out. Like gradually over time, they let go of those like time restraints. But in this one, they tried to adapt this as faithfully as possible and like kind of get players like informed of like where Atelier's roots came from. So
it
give
sounds
that a
like they
read.
made a couple of adjustments though, so it's not as restrictive as it was originally.
Yeah,
Which is,
I mean,
probably fair. It's like we introduce it back, but a little bit later in terms of
Well,
how much time things take and whatnot.
I don't have problem with time management in most of the games, but the problem I really hate is like when you're playing Atelier Totori, for example, there'll be like key events that happens in like different towns and you have no idea if it's there. So it's like, and then you would have to spend 2 weeks to travel across the two towns, and then you don't know if it's there or not, and it just become a nuisance to play. I don't think like time management is an issue to be general usually, but if you don't know where the events are and then you waste time trying to find them, then you're not going to have enough time to get the best results.
Yeah, I think there's also had some grievances with like it like has a shorter runtime than like modern Atelier games. So like and it's they're still charging for this full price. It's kind of like this, the length of experience compared to like the contemporary Atelier releases.
I think it's
Still being sold as full
$50.
price.
I think the old games are supposed to be short, but they give you multiple endings, and you're supposed to take advantage of the New Game Plus to make it easier to get different endings. Usually,
This was also the this game also has I think like some sort of deluxe edition that like there's some sort of like SKU of this game where it has the original Atelier Marie game that you can also original play as well, right?
Yeah, it's the deluxe edition comes with Atelier Marie Plus, which is I think like it's not the original version of the original game. It's like the second version of the original game, if that makes sense.
Okay, and do you know any of the enhancements that was put into it, like or
No,
not
I
or not?
don't.
Okay, okay,
Let's.
yeah.
I'm
But
looking
I
at I'm
think
looking at the Steam page for it. All it says is the original version, Atelier Marie Plus, will become available on the title menu. You can compare the original version with the remake and enjoy the atmosphere of the original game as it was when it was first released, with upgraded resolution and localized in English for the first time. So, seems like it's
Yeah.
pretty much besides being translated, which of course is a huge besides. It's
Yeah.
pretty much the same version. So
I think my only gripe with that is like it's really cool, really fucking cool that they did that. I wish it was sold separately and it's not like gated behind the deluxe edition of this. I kind of wish like there's like if people who only want to experience the original, like they should have the option to do that too. So maybe it's in the cards at some point that they release it separately, but I would like to see that. And then lastly, I wrote something for the site. It's basically kind of a summary of all the thoughts and things that I observed in the Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis closed beta that I spoke about last week during its closed beta. So I gave it a pretty lengthy, article, and it's kind of more for me in the sense that like I kind of want to catalog this just in case there's any changes to the full release. So maybe we can compare and contrast like what they decide to do with the full release, or they decide to like improve on some aspects of it. So um, we still don't have a release date, firm release date for this, but we'll see what happens. And I'm curious to give the full game a shot. So if you're interested in knowing more than you probably want to know about the game, give my article a read. I already spoke about this last week, and yeah, that's what was on the site this week in terms of articles. And now we don't really have a main big topic this week aside from like the it's not really within our scope, but there's that whole uh the almost the conclusion of the saga of Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard and like having to get through the FTC. So that stuff is all wrapping up. It seems like the FTC, the courts are giving them the green light. They triumphed over the FTC on that aspect. So I
Very
think
likely what will happen is that because there's been a lot of political pressure to the CMA in the UK,
Mhm.
what's likely going to happen is that Microsoft and the CMA are meeting on Monday, which means that probably by the time folks wake up in like the US on Monday, we'll have the news that the deal has officially been closed.
Yeah,
Because with all the pressure towards the CMA, and it's not just Microsoft, a lot of companies have been like, hey, it's kind of weird that this one branch of the UK government, this agency, basically has no oversight. And it's just one of those things where it's like you turn up the heat, it's like
yeah. I mean, there's two outcomes to decide. It's either the CMA, finally gives into pressure, and then the deal finally is through. It's all done and sealed, or if the CMA still is
It'll
Yeah,
go
still holding
through,
out.
but there will be some weird shit where it's like there will be like a separate like entity for the UK or something. But
Yeah,
at
they have
this
to go to like
point,
third parties to distribute in the UK, so that's the
yeah,
loophole that they can do for
yeah.
that.
At this point, though, it's very clear that it's going through.
Yeah, so that's kind of a big thing in gaming this week. You can go read it up on other sites. We didn't really cover that because it's kind of not really in the scope, but it is interesting to see all go down. Um, but the just yesterday, as of this recording, Square Enix did another out of nowhere shadow drop. I don't I don't know what to tell you. So Gematsu at first noticed that Dragon Quest Treasures got rated in Europe for PC, and shortly after that, just out of nowhere in a tweet, Square Enix was like, "Hey, guess what? We released Dragon Quest Treasures on PC via Steam," and we're like, "Cool." And then so Dragon Quest Treasures just now is available on PC through Steam, and as you might expect, it has a higher frame rate, higher visual fidelity with increased resolution support. Um, Adam, you've been playing a bit of it. How do you like the port?
So I never played the Switch version, so I can't make a direct comparison. The port's actually pretty solid. It's got more options to it than I expected in terms of like textures and shadows and ambient occlusion and resolution and frame rate. You can play it at basically an unlocked frame rate, which I'm gonna guess on Switch it was stuck at 30. I was streaming it earlier, and one of our contributors, Tony, was like, "Wow, this looks way better than the Switch version." So
It's not really surprising the PC port is good because Builders 2 is best on PC. So yeah,
do we know who did the port? Let me check the page if it's just Square Enix or if it has a house. No, it just says Square Enix and Tosei, who's the developer. So, but yeah, it's a pretty solid port. I'm kind of going into this game. I'm not expecting it to be like excellent, like Dragon Quest XI, but so I'm about 3 hours in, so I just started, kind of got through all the sort of tutorial stuff. It's just hoping for a kind of a relaxing, charming, cartoony game. So
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it. I'm
pretty-
enjoying it for what it is so far. I think my expectations are in check based on Paige's original review of the Switch version and so on and so forth. But
I think it's pretty hard to beat Dragon Quest 11.
Yeah, Dragon Quest 11. What we gave it 10.
Probably one of the
We gave
best
it.
RPGs of all time.
We gave it
have-
3.
give it
10 out of 10
3 times.
Yeah,
Yes, I gave it a 10. I still stand by that. I will
I think
not back that down.
Yeah,
Call-
we gave
call
it
him
3
Dick.
different 10 out of 10s. So I am kind of curious though, like the strategy of making it a shadow drop. If just like the splashy nature of that is worthwhile, rather than saying, because sometimes for like stuff like Triangle Strategy, for instance, it's not exactly the same situation, but they announce it, like a week ahead of time. So not with a lot of foresight, but just saying, hey, it's coming out next week versus hey, it's out now. So
at the very least, this coming out at a very somewhat vacant time for like RPGs. Is that they're like there's not really anything on the immediate horizon that like Dragon Quest fans will like immediately grab onto. It's not like the World Ends with You PC release, right? For Neo, World Ends with You, where like it was shadow drop, and it was like right before like Persona 5 Royals like PC release, I think, which was already known.
yeah.
And that was just like really bad
And
timing.
of course, that one was like an Epic exclusive and then a Steam release, so
Yeah,
that never helps.
so strange, but I guess better timing than Neo World Ends with You, which continues to really get shit on all ends. But unfortunately, um, this is a neat one. So a while back, Sting actually released a PC version of Yggdra Union on Steam, but under early access. Now we got word that the full release of Yggdra Union on Steam will be coming out on July 27th, and this is coming out on. Uh, this is also coming out on Nintendo Switch on July 27th as well. So this is kind of so it's technically the fully complete version of Yggdra Union. Not to say, but it was a kind of weird situation because in early access, Yggdra Union was still playable from beginning to finish the entire game under early access, but they really wanted to tighten up like the localization and any bugs that were introduced in the PC version and any quality of life enhancements that based on early access from player feedback on that. So that was what they used the early access period for, not necessarily releasing an incomplete version, but just made sure it was at its best when it finally fully released. So at the end of this month, just a few days away, if you're a fan of Yggdra Union, or if you're interested in checking it out for the first time, it's a pretty damn good game. It'll be out once again, Switch, and the fully 1.0 release on Steam on July 27th.
Yeah, this is cool because Sting has actually been releasing a couple of remasters for their strategy RPG games over the last couple of years. In fact, Yggdra Union came out in Japan, like the remaster, I mean, like 3 years ago for Switch. But at the time, so way back on the original like Game Boy Advance release, it was Atlas who did the localization, and so it was a little bit up in the air. Like, well, this game is localized, but can they remaster it? Like, what's the state of the localization? Who has the rights to it? Can they use it? And it had been years since the remasters had started coming out. There's also a couple of spin-offs like Blaze Union and Gloria Union. So for a while, I was just thinking these are never going to get released. Like, the localization is just kind of up in the air. So the fact that this actually got a Steam release and now is getting a Switch release, and I assume it's basically at least based off the Atlas localization, maybe not exactly the same, but it's based on it, I assume, is fact that that's cool. And then also, I'm assuming you're getting to this, but Sting also released or announced that they're going to be remastering Riviera, which is another game in the series. I think it's technically the first one in that Department Heaven series. And so that one, they haven't given any details at all, like platform dates, no English confirmation or anything like that. But now it seems like there's actually a chance that it'll get localized, because I mean it was localized at one point, that it'll get a release in the West, the remaster. So
considering that, I wouldn't be shocked actually if Shiravoon handles that. Because like they just did like they've worked with a lot of, well, they did the Otorumono PC releases and whatnot, and so who knows.
Yeah, I would like Riviera is a pretty damn cool RPG. It's like kind of like an isometric turn-based sort of RPG. This was released all the way back in what, 2002?
Yeah, 2002-ish.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, like I think Atlas originally localized it here. So it was kind of just so candidly mentioned too. It's like, oh yeah, we're working on an HD remaster for Riviera. Bye.
Yeah,
that's basically
yep. It's like, we're making a remaster. That's it. That's the announcement.
Bye.
Well, they don't want to release half the catalog. Might as well just release them all.
I mean, I'm sure they're working. It's cool to see, like, slowly but surely, Sting is like making sure that their awesome catalog is like being able to be released to like a modern audience. Some way to like continue supporting these like the really cool games and being able to be
So what are we missing?
modern.
Is it just Knights in the Nightmare?
I mean, there's a Switch release for Knights in the Nightmare that they did recently, but it's only in Japan.
I don't think Gunnar has gotten a remaster.
Right.
That one was weird because I think
this whole conversation is just reminding me that Fairy Fencer F tactical RPG was also developed by Sting.
Yep, I was actually about to ask. Was that any good? The tactical parts of it?
It was fine. It was fine.
Okay.
I mean, I gave it a 7. It's like a perfectly like it is one of Idea Factory's better releases.
So
Thank you, Sting.
So to get a good game from Idea Factories, just tell them don't develop it. Get someone else to do it.
If Zach was here, he would be holding the flag for Hyperdimension Noir, which is also Sting.
Oh yeah, that's true. Let's see here. We got a release date for Banishers: Ghosts of New Eden that is coming out on November 7th for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. This is the action RPG that is being worked by Don't Nod in collaboration with Focus Entertainment. This is basically the second collaboration that they had since Vampire, that released a few years ago now. And like the release date reveal is kind of like a very small cinematic to reveal it. But the last time they showed it last month, they actually showed more gameplay on what you do in that game, looking like a pretty cool action RPG where you take control of like a duo of like ghost hunters. to protect
Yeah,
the human will from
the
specters.
kind of the twist in the premise is that one of the ghost hunters is a ghost.
Oh,
So- And they're like a
Soft.
couple, and it's like the man is alive and the woman is dead.
Oh man, this sounds complicated.
Yeah, I never played
All right.
Vampire or Vampire, or how you pronounce it. So I heard that game was kind of like decent, but maybe a little bit unpolished. I remember Kyle reviewed it for us way back when.
Right.
I do know Don't Nod. First of all, I hate their new logo. Anyways, they basically have said that they're going to really be pushing their RPG stuff. They feel like that's where they see a lot of growth. So, if you're not familiar, these are the guys who originally made the original Life is Strange in the sequel. So, but Vampire is their RPG, so this is that's the more apt comparison. Yeah, I'm sort of interested in this game, but not. It's like
I want to hear word of mouth personally for me. Like Vampire seemed cool on paper, but it didn't seem to really jive with people. So, like I'd be down to So hopefully this is good. I want to. I
also
don't
want to see
any
what
game
else
to be
is
bad.
releasing in November, though.
Exactly.
So,
Right. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is getting another DLC with the Ground Battle DLC.
Speaking of CyberConnect,
that's right. It covers the 23rd World Tournament. I don't know if that means something.
I'm just going by context. I think that's the World Tournament that takes place near the end of Dragon Ball.
Is that with like Super Saiyan Man?
No, not Dragon Ball Z. That's with the end of Dragon Ball with
the original
Piccolo
one.
Jr. Yeah.
Oh right, okay.
So, as I understand it, this DLC, it's basically kind of like young adult Goku, or teenage Goku. I don't know how old he is at this time. Facing off against Piccolo Jr. in this tournament in Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z. And in terms of mechanics, it takes away all the flying and energy beam stuff and is more martial arts.
Martial arts focused. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's actually cool.
So this is the 5th DLC of this game. I don't quite. There's like 2 on each of the Dragon Ball Super movies. There's one on Bardock. There's one on Trunks, and this is the 5th one. And then there's going to be a 6th one too.
They really like pouring out DLC for their Dragon Ball titles. Like Xenoverse 2 got 10 billion DLC releases.
Xenoverse 2 sold like an absurd amount of copies.
I think Xenoverse 2 even got DLC on that. If Brian was here, he'd be more familiar with this. There was that like semi-recent movie that was like a CG style movie that came out, and I think Xenoverse 2 got DLC on that. So it's like still getting DLC.
I want to know like what the playable roster is like in Xenoverse 2 right now. Like what the number is. It has to be like an obscene amount.
One thing that's kind of annoying about these DLC announcements is that they don't give any sort of date or even window. They're just like, we're making this DLC, and it's like, okay, when does it come out? Who knows?
Oh, I don't know.
and then they based on past, what they've done before, they just like release it one day, like it's out now. Oh, okay, thanks. But yeah, there's going to be this. This is the 5th DLC, and there's at least one more that we don't know of.
Time to bring George back to finish the review.
Finish the fight, George. All right, we have a delay here. Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, has pushed its release date back to August 10th. And they were kind of, they're being a little cheeky about this. The primary reason is to make sure all versions of the game is like they're as closely they achieve performance parity as closely as possible in between. It's basically coming out to everything, including Switch. So PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. So obviously with that amount of platforms, they want to make sure that they minimize the amount of like performance problems in between each version, make sure that it's like in tip-top shape. But they were also being cheeky about it, being they said, hey, originally we were gonna release on August 3rd, and we heard that Baldur's Gate 3 was kind of moving its release date up to August 3rd, so we want to give you time.
It's actually kind of refreshing that they literally say by name in the press release. By the way, basically, Baldur's Gate 3 comes out on August 3rd, so we're going to delay a week. We don't want to release on the same day as that.
And I appreciate that kind of like spirit. It's like, all right, yeah. So I do want to play some Baldur's Gate 3, and I want to put a lot of time into it. Stray Gods here. I'm hoping it has a really, really cool approach
Yeah,
what
it
it's
seems
doing.
different than
Yeah.
a musical RPG is like. Has that been done before? I don't know.
I don't know.
Does
So,
Kingdom
I know
Hearts
there's.
Little Mermaid singing sequence count?
I mean, I know there are
Yeah.
RPGs with songs in it, but this seems more. They're kind of like a mix
It-
between musical, adventure.
it's like a stage play
RPG.
narrative
Yeah.
almost. Yeah.
I think they offered us a review code, and I think Paige might be reviewing it for us. We'll see.
Okay.
So
Nice. So we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. Uh, next we have a release date for. Oh God, please. I'm
Chow, how do you
sorry.
pronounce this?
How do you pronounce this, Shao? I'm gonna fucking butcher it.
I got to see the Chinese title. Can't just
God.
give me like Xuan-Yuan? I think.
I think Xuan-Yuan Sword, Mist Beyond the Mountains, is releasing on July 26th, and this is coming to PC via Steam. It's also headed for Nintendo Switch, but no release date has been given for that version yet. Um, I don't know really much about this. Is this like part of like an ongoing series, right?
I guess this game is actually originally made in like 1999
Okay.
in China,
Yeah.
and this is like a remake of it or like a
Okay.
re-release for like modern audiences and
Yeah. I
with an
I,
English
I
localization.
admittedly I do not know anything about this series except that it's a long running
Okay,
RPG series.
it was Xuan-Yuan Sword 3. Sorry
Okay.
if I mispronounced that.
And
Damn, it's already the third one. Damn.
So
wow, well, are you looking forward to like a specific number, getting a remake?
Wow, when you see numbers like that, you don't know. Do I start with the first one? Is this like a Final Fantasy?
This was released back in 1999, Chow. Really, Xuan-Yuan Sword 3. So, I don't know. It was what? How many years in the making? I can't do math. A lot of years in the making. 24 years in the making. Okay, we have a release date once again. This is for the PlayStation 5 version of the Caligula Effect 2. It's coming out on October 17th in North America and October 20th in Europe. There's just, another continuing trend of like Nisa making PlayStation 5 versions of prior release titles just to have like some sort of like store shelf presence, and for people who've like never played these games. Obviously, we have the PlayStation 4 version that'll work on the PS5. There's not like a significant like enhancement to it. It's just like, hey, if you have a PS5 and you want another RPG for it, and you can get this, and like this has a physical release date, really, right? Like a physical release for these games. I believe it does, and that's the reason why they're releasing it.
okay,
All
So,
right.
gonna
I'm gonna be.
step back 1 second. I looked at a video from East Asia Soft. They pronounce it Xuan-Yuan Sword.
oh fuck, we're gonna get it.
Yeah,
Xuan-Yuan Sword.
okay,
Sorry, Xuan
look,
Yuan.
look, guys. I am a Cantonese speaker. Okay,
Okay,
which is called Hin Yun Yim in Cantonese. Okay, which is totally different sounding. Okay, so
I
it's
believe
hard.
you. I mean, I don't know anything about Chinese, so if you tell me that, I'll believe you 100%. I do not know Chinese at all. I'm sorry.
Okay, so it's Hin Yun Yim in Cantonese, but it's a Taiwanese game, so we should say it in Mandarin. So
Okay, so yeah. So Caligula Effect 2, PS5 version this October for North America.
We never reviewed this. I remember when it was coming out. There was just a bunch of other stuff coming out. And it's like,
I know that Colin was interested in doing it, I think, and
but
obviously
he couldn't.
Colin, yeah.
Atlas Fallen is coming up very soon. Also coming on August 10th. They released some more footage on it with behind the scenes gameplay presentations. It's basically a lot of the dev team coming together and talking about aspects of the game. Obviously within
Very
their field and
German.
like yeah. So you had the game director, creative director, audio director, and other key staff members talk about it. It's looking really cool. I really want to play it. I'm looking forward to it. So check that out if you're interested, and it'll just be coming here in a few weeks. Um, Next here we have more details on East 10 Nordics. We have
Yeah.
other NPCs like Grimmson, Gunnar, Hugill, Flair, and my favorite NPC, Recapture Battles.
Yes.
Yes.
By the way,
Maybe
Flair is from
actually,
East too.
Yes, so we do have a returning character from an earlier East title. Who was Flair in East 2?
He's the
Remember?
The
person
doctor that nobody remembers.
No, I remember the character. I forgot the name. Because a lot of those names
Okay.
you lose. But you save him from like a mine or something, and he's the doctor that saves Lilia at one point.
Yeah,
in the
he
game.
was there trying to find a herb down in the cave. You know,
Yeah.
it feels like we're playing Ass Libra again. They used the same concept there. You know?
He's
Yeah,
age
from East
47 in this game. He's old as fuck.
Damn.
Well, I mean, like, this game takes place relatively early in the East timeline. I think it's like after Salsetta. So Adol's only like 19 or something like that.
Oh, the problem with the plot is they keep retconning, and now this is the first in the timeline. I don't even know what is canon anymore. It's like the East 1 and 2 even fucking happen at this point.
Well, it's just kind of funny. The fact that this game takes place early in the timeline, and it's like, I guess none of this stuff ever comes up again. It's never mentioned later. So that's kind of funny. But
Yeah, and then another aspect of this game that they've been really pushing is, hey, Adol has his own ship and he pilots it, and
And there's naval battles,
yeah,
guys.
it seems like this is sort of the new take on like the defense little wave-based battles in the last two games, like the camp defense and the monstrum attacks or whatever they were called. But instead,
I
it's
wish
like
they-
you raid ships and islands. So
I wish they scrapped that idea. I don't really like the raid system in both of those games. I feel they ruined the pace of you'll be like about to kill the final boss or something, and they'll be like, "Go back, your town's in danger," and you'll be like, "Oh fuck, I'm just trying to kill this boss here." You know,
it is sort of weird. It always kind of felt like sort of a weird appendage, just like, oh yeah, there's also those raid battles. Okay.
I wonder. Well, we'll see how they do it. Like the monster ones weren't as bad. They're still kind of tedious, but not as bad as Beats, in my opinion. But
I
they're
think
still
it's less tedious because they're all the parties fighting, and you get to see
exactly.
them on screen.
It's
But,
just utter chaos, and like things are just like kind of dying really fast in them. So, but
But-
they still do have like a weird way in how they slot it into the narrative.
it's such a filler. It's just like here's some extra. It's so extra, to be honest, but not in a good way.
Also, the music in those battles is kind of bad, at least in 8.
Damn, singing will tear you apart.
Yep.
East 10 coming out on September 28th in Japan. That's coming up, a few months if you're planning to import that. We got a new Persona 5 Tactica info drop that has introduces a new character Toshiro and several new systems in it. This Toshiro is a up and coming member of the Japan's Diet, and he's seemingly next in line to become the country's next prime minister. And also some of the gameplay details they shared with this Persona 5 Tactica info drops, like the cover system,
There's a skill tree.
skill tree, yes, and just kind of going over basic Persona.
I heard
shit.
I heard this game is like Jagged Alliance 3.
What? Oh shit!
I'm joking, but it's got that similar XCOM-ish vibe, only
Joker's
very personified.
Joker has a thick Russian accent now. Let's see what else we have here, and we have another info drop on Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. And it goes over main characters, story, new monsters, etc. As we all surmise, once again, this is kind of directly linked to Dragon Quest IV with Sorrow, and kind of his the prologue to his story, based on
So-
like his.
Is the prologue.
Yeah, there's how Sorrow kind of recruited all the monsters served under him in Dragon Quest IV. So this is kind of a neat twist for old school Dragon Quest. It's not like totally essential for to getting into this game.
It's probably like semi-canon, where it's like this is an interpretation of what might have led to Sorrow in Dragon Quest IV.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you're mainly here for the gameplay mechanics, for Dragon Quest Monsters.
And maybe it'll come to PC 6 months after.
Yeah, I would like to see re-releases of those other Dragon Quest Monsters games too. That'd be great.
We never got the second one right. That was 3DS.
No, I don't think
I get the Dragon Quest Monsters and the Dragon Quest Monsters Joker mixed up.
Yeah, me too. I don't remember which one we got. Which one you did.
I know there was one on 3DS. Which one was the one that James did? He interviewed the fan translation team for. Which one was that?
Dragon Quest Rocket Slime 3DS.
Oh, that was Rocket Slime.
Oh, that's
I'm getting that
Rocket
mixed up with
Slime.
Monsters. Okay.
Too many Dragon Quest spin-offs, man. I bet to the Dragon Quest spin-off that was
What
global
was the
only
one that came out on
Japan.
PC yesterday? What was it? Which one was it?
Treasures?
Treasures,
Oh, okay, Treasures.
You were playing it
I
earlier.
was making a joke about all these Dragon Quest spin-offs. Okay, it was a joke.
I met on the Dragon Quest Champions, and that was a mobile-only title that came out in Japan like barely a few weeks ago. And that's like an art. It has the classic RPG mechanics of like you constructing like a team of three that like you kind of basically create and gear up, and then and it's like and its main mode is like a battle royale where you can go against other people online, and you all drop onto like an island via like you get rocketed like out of like an airship, and it's like and then you control this team of three, and you go around beating up people on like an enclosing circle like miasma on this island until like one person comes out victorious, and it's really really goofy and stupid, but it's sort of a novel concept because it's basically the battle royale concept, but the flair of Dragon Quest. So like it gives you like that those classic first person perspective on battles, but you can like interrupt and like butt it on like an ongoing battle. So you're, like it shows like it can show like a full party of like teams of three. So like you see six people on the battlefield in front of you, first person, but they can like attack each other too. So it's like it's goofy, it's crazy. But
I was
yeah,
going to ask, has anyone played a Dragon Quest Battle Victory Road?
that sounds familiar. I don't know which one that is though.
That's an arcade machine where
Oh,
it has like
no.
that freaking sword that comes in from the center of the control panel when you're about to do like the ultimate moves.
No, I
Oh, so that
I haven't
kind
seen
of
that.
like sequel to that Wii game or something.
Yeah. They ported it to the Wii, but it used to be arcade only, and you had to like bring your own card to save your game and stuff. I was wondering if anyone played that one.
No,
I think that was just more like a spectacle game. You just watch it for like all like the heroes doing their cool super attacks. But I guess it's pretty obscure nowadays. Nobody really even heard of it.
what they're still waiting for is the Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake and the fucking Dragon Quest 12. Well, where are those?
After Octopath Traveler 3 comes out.
Come on, man. Come on, man. I really need to see more of those.
You
You know
know,
what? I can accept that. Octopath 2 is so good. So
I was gonna ask. Speaking of spin-offs, you sent me a Famitsu scan the other day, Josh,
Uh-huh.
of a not Rune Factory game by the Rune Factory devs called
Yeah,
Rear
that's
Sekai.
Rear Sekai. Yeah, they had like a new info drop on that. Like so detailing some of the characters. I don't know too much about it because I don't know much about the Rune Factory series, but Famitsu showed off a bit of that. I don't know if they have it up on any website, but they gave it like a release date in Japan, but it's only Japan for right now on the Switch. It's like sometimes between like October and November, I believe.
I'm pretty curious on what this game is. I mean, I am seeing Isekai, but I'm also seeing Rune Factory. I'm
No,
still
no,
on
no,
the
it's
Rune
not.
Factory.
Look, it's not. You say it's a Rear Sekai. Okay, get it
No, but
right.
I'm saying Isekai. I mean, they're like the characters are wearing school uniforms in one moment, and now they're like dressed like in like medieval era uniforms.
I don't know.
Sounds like an Isekai to me.
Well, if you like isekai anime so much, why do you play an isekai video game,
I'm
Chow?
looking at
Why don't you
Marvelous's.
reincarnate as a vending machine?
I'm looking at
Okay.
Marvelous's website and like the Japanese website, and they haven't posted anything about it, so it might be Famitsu exclusive for now.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Just a
That's,
little bit of background information. Oftentimes, when Famitsu comes out on Thursdays, I know it always leaks a few days ahead of time, but when it comes out, oftentimes the publisher will like also do their website update at the same time. Like for example, with the East stuff, it's in Famitsu, but then they basically post it on their website at the same time. But Marvelous hasn't, so I'm not sure what the deal is with this Rear Sekai game. So, but they announced it in January of this year, and it's related to the Rune Factory series, but I don't know anything else about it.
It's like the developers of like Rune Factory 4 Special and Rune Factory 5. So Hakama, I believe, is the development studio.
It has music by Motoi Sakuraba.
Hell yeah, the hardest working man.
Who never
Are you
like
sold?
10
Are you sold
projects.
on it yet? Are you sold?
No.
No,
Damn.
I need to see it in motion and not be on the Switch. That'd be great. Yeah. That wraps up what we got for this week in terms of game releases, articles, and news.
Nothing's happening next week. We looked. We still have a few weeks
So-
until Baldur's Gate 3.
So we'll see what we can talk about next week. Maybe something crazy in the news happens, and that just becomes the main focal point. We don't know. We have no
We
idea.
say that every time. That
Maybe
somehow there's a
maybe
3-hour
Diablo 4
podcast.
will be on Game Pass and I'll actually play a bit of it.
Now there's not a 3-hour podcast. Look at the runtime. We're actually doing good. Okay.
No, but I'm saying every time we say nothing for the next week, there's
We
always
are-
a 3-hour podcast next week.
we're-
Because it'll be like, oh, random Nintendo Direct dropped or some shit like that, and you're like, oh fuck.
No man, when I steer the ship, Chow, it's chop chop. We gotta get through this. That's no job at Brian. He does a fantastic job. I'm usually the problem child who goes on way too long. You can find us on our website, our lovely website, rpgsite.net. You can still follow us on Twitter.
For now, at least.
I mean, I know we say it every week, but it's always it seems to be a precarious situation on a weekly basis. You can follow us on Twitter at rpgsite. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/rpgsite.net. You can follow our YouTube, youtube.com/rpgsite.net.
I think we have our threads, technically.
Technically, we also do have a Blue Sky, technically, but we don't know what we're gonna do yet. It's the Wild West out there. You can also find this on your favorite podcast app, whether that be on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you get podcasts. And you can also join our Discord at discord.com/invite/RPG site. So it's been active there. Things are going on. Whatever RPGs or non RPGs you fancy, our community is always welcome to greet you and have fun. Other than that, that ends this edition of the Tetracast. You guys have a safe one. Stay safe, have fun, and you guys all have have a good rest of your day, rest of your weekend, rest of your week, and all that good stuff. Ciao.